looks like we're live. So I've got a huge mess of things around here, so I'm going to do my best to get tidying up. I've got my InTheWorks skid, my Brazin Scale one's already on the crawler. I need to get the wheels off, start looking at skid options, and basically just got the camera rolling so that I keep talking through what I'm doing, which really helps me work out, well, it really helps me work out what I need to do. I'll just remove the 3 body pins because, yet again, I've lost some body pins. I've also got a variety of bolts, a helicoil kit, a box full of links, a Dremel, calipers, measuring tools, and all my standard RC tools around. I've got a different lighting setup, and I'm not sure it works for live streams because I can't set the colour temperature on the cameras, but for actual videos looks really good, and you'll be seeing that in future videos soon. Don't want my talk to be too high. So at the moment we've got our close-up camera, if that's going to work this time. Did have a few problems last time. So I've got it on a little sort of gorilla pod mount so I can move it around. But if we take a quick tour, just remember where the camera is. Yeah, cool. So we've got the ESC mounted here, and the battery goes in here, and then the motor is at this point. Now, if I move this camera around, what we can see is the ESC and the battery are way higher than this skid mount location, so I can bring those down, which really lowers the center of gravity, but then everything is moving back along the rig, and I'm already thinking of removing the brass portal cover that's there. So I think this needs to move forwards. Unfortunately, with the skid that I've got, oh, I don't have a huge amount of light, I'll do my best here. With the skid that I've got, I don't have many options for moving it forwards, but this InTheWorks skid, I think I can mount quite far forwards, and that dot that you can see is actually this hole here, because it moves the gearbox around. So we would move the gearbox probably a good inch forwards, but then we're going to have, well, we're going to have fun with the links and things, so not sure how that's going to work. It should mean I can keep all this stuff in the back, and then we'll have to have a look at my custom links in the front. Fortunately, this is a bolt straight through, so it might be that those links don't have to move too much, and it all just works. And because I'm running short links on the back, and not running the huge Traxxas ones, that should be quite good fun. And who's around? Oh, RC Mac is around. Hey, dude. Or dudette, don't know. Never know your gender these days. So, try and get that at a reasonable angle. I've not really talked about this a lot, but I film out of my garage, so it's it gets messy because there's not a huge amount of space, because I'm only using like the last sort of 2-3 square meters, and I'm sure if my wife is watching, she'll be very unhappy to hear that the garage is a mess, but fortunately she doesn't have to come in here. I will get this to balance. It's one of these bendy gorilla pod ones, but I had trouble getting the right height last time, so that'll do for now. Cool. Doing the old drill to get the wheels off, so it's just not set on the highest torque setting, it's set about 2/3 up so I don't strip anything, but it's the easiest way to get your wheels off. And you can pretend you're a Formula 1 mechanic. I'm sure they don't make the noise. In fact, the amount of time it's taken me to say that, they would have already done the wheels by now. So now the Scattergun's got muddy wheels because I was at Armscliffe and I didn't bother to clean it, but I have managed to vent the wheels using like a little attachment that I made for the drill. So now I've got vented wheels running hairbuns. These hairbuns are amazing. They were running on the G500 at the weekend, and they got absolutely soaked, and the water just got flung out of them. Now, this is one that's been run on the G500, been filled full of water, and blasted around at about 20-25 mile an hour. And you can see that it's stretched a bit around the middle, but that centre size is the same size as a normal foam. So that stretches just to make it fit around a normal wheel. They're amazing. Try them out. Like, some people are reporting they can get the foams for 50p from Poundland. Not sure what it's like in America, but yeah. Right, RC Mac here. You can't get the Scattergun chassis in the UK. You have to order it from NWSD Scale Designs. I actually bought two because the shipping was about $20–25. They didn't take long to arrive, and I don't know why I bought two, because they are super durable. I've even twisted and tweaked it, and the guy who designed it was kind of like, wow, that's quite surprising you've managed to tweak it in that way. I even got the panhard bolt to come loose. I've just put a stronger bolt in and it's fine. The sidewinder I got from RC Mart, which is Hong Kong. They were terrible. And the revolver I got from RPP Hobby in the States. Now, if you want a sidewinder or a revolver or something else, RPP Hobby, it was like 5 days delivery, FedEx Express, overall, including what I paid and the customs charge, was probably £10 more than I would pay for that combination in the UK from like Model Sport or somewhere else. They're having stock issues, so I would say Model Sport, Wheel Spin, those kind of shops, or your local hobby shop, but they just don't have availability. They're very hard to get hold of. Would I sell my spare one? No, and that's because if I inevitably destroy the rails on the G500, or I break my promise to not do anything other than change the electrics. Originally it was going to stay completely stock, then I had an AX system spare, so it's got new electronics. I'm saving it for should anything happen to this, because this rig performs insanely well, like amazing, and it just keeps getting better and better as I learn what it's capable of, and so I want to keep a spare pair of rails because I don't want to lose any, because I'd be gutted if I had to wait like 4 weeks for it, although given current lockdown rules I might have to wait 4 weeks. Anyway, so some of the challenges I'm going to have today will be in where I've done the cabling, but I was sensible and curled my cables so that they can be rerouted and moved around. But the first thing I'm going to do is get this skid off. So the skid is held on by four screws. So I'm going to get the sliders off, then we'll get the motor off, then the transmission out, and then look at skids. Unfortunately, one of these bolts has decided to unscrew itself for me, so the Surpass Outrunner. So I've been doing a budget series, and I've actually had some slightly good and bad issues with the Surpass, which are coming out in a video soon, but I keep having problems with them either setting themselves on fire or the magnets falling off them, and it's down to the fact that I was using a budget ESC. So if the question is, RC Mac has got the Surpass Outrunner, what ESC will be good with that? The annoying answer there is the SW4. The Sidewinder would be great with it. The Castle Mamba and the Mamba Micro, so the Mamba X, although that's quite expensive, and the Mamba Micro will be really good with that. If you're going to run a Mamba Micro, you'll need to run a separate BEC or a direct drive servo, and not have your truck weigh much more than about £6. If it weighs much more than £6, you know, if you've covered it in brass, you are going to have problems with the Mamba Micro. But the Mamba itself, that's a really good one, because if you decide to go away from the surpass, you've then got the option of centered and sensorless. The reason why I went for the SW4 was I knew I was going sensorless outrunner, and I was going to be staying with the outrunner despite how loud they are. But the startup speed of the SW4 is lower than the Mamba X. It's just slightly more controlled, and that's because of some of the hardware changes they made to it, so they can't update the Mamba X. However, reading into it, the SW4 can start up at about 180 RPM, the Mamba X is about 240, and the axe system's about 380. So the axe system, the lowest speed you can go with that is nearly twice what this can do, which then means that if you're used to the axe system and its startup, you can run a much bigger pinion in this, and you can have a much wider band of range. And different to the axe system, where you could only add expo to the transmitter, the Castle you can program to have a throttle curve, so the throttle curve is in the ESC, so you get all of the granularity of your transmitter, but then you get the throttle curve in here. And I've got this set to 20% throttle on this is actually 50% on my receiver, and then 20 to 100% is the final 50%. So that first 50% is super low speed, and the control is just phenomenal. And it also means if you're doing low speed runs and you're holding your finger still, if your finger does sort of twitch or wobble or it's cold, because that start is so smooth that it doesn't like jerk at all, because the change in voltage is so small. Right, we've got the sliders off, so we're just going to get the motor undone, not off. So we'll just pull this off. I'm just going to do this by hand, because I had to chase a thread into this, and the electric screwdriver, because you've got to push down, doesn't play nice with this thread, so I'm just doing it by hand. But it does get me a nice tight sort of bolt up. It's just the electric screwdriver was starting to make it come loose. And what I'm doing here is just so I can get the gearbox off. I need to get the gearbox off to look at my ESC options. So it's running a standard TRX gearbox. I have thought, actually, because I tend to run quite high kV motors, because I like lots of motor speed but then lots of gear reduction. But I've been thinking about the idea of, and this is only an idea at the moment, not actually running a gearbox and running, instead of a 2500 motor, running a 14 or 1700 motor with a really low gear reduction, like a really low pinion, but no gearbox, and just have a transfer case in there. And that would remove a huge amount of weight, but I would need a large amount of gear reduction there. And that's because you get gear reduction in the portals. So if I can work out the right combinations, that would be quite cool. And I would still try and find a spur and a pinion mount, and then go into a transfer case rather than the gearbox. So we're just going to take this skid out completely. To do that, I've just disconnected the drive shaft at the back and at the front, and now we've got our skid. So I'm hoping to keep all of that link geometry, although I've got custom links on the front, so that's going to be fun. What size are these? These are 2.5s. Yeah, they're not the ones with the bolts. Great. So I was telling someone about this yesterday. I prefer the panhead style screws wherever you can use them, wherever you've got the clearance, because they're much less likely to strip if you're using cheaper tools. And what you spend on screws is a lot cheaper than buying all of these MIP bits. So then you can just have these cheapy Banggood hex drivers and not have to spend a fortune on tools. The design and the print of this Brazin Scale skid has been absolutely amazing. I am over the moon with it, but I do want all the benefits of the InTheWorks one. So my gearbox is out, and we'll just go through the two skids, try to find the camera. Oh, I've managed to move the screen so you can see screencast. Why is that? Let me just... sort that out. Right, that's better. There we go. For some reason it was showing the menu and I didn't notice. Cool. Oh, the lighting's not too bad. It's making me a bit grey. Look like John Major off Spitting Image, if you're old enough to remember. So I like the 45 tooth spur because essentially it gives you a lot finer granularity as the motor turns. The motor's got 14 poles in it, which means that it'll sort of jump between them at slow speeds if there's some kind of pushback, and having the spur, the bigger spur, smooths that out a lot more. Right, these two skids. So the Brazin Scale is designed for the all-time low, but I've drilled it in a previous video to make these two bolts fit the front part of my scattergun. This Northwest Scaler Designs one, I might end up drilling again. We'll see what the crack is with that. This will get very modified. In fact, it's got some grub screw holes here. They might be perfect for what I want to do, because it normally mounts, if we just put the chassis down, yeah, that brass is definitely coming off. Let's have a look. If we put the chassis down and take a look, this would normally fit here, and I am hoping that I can get it here, which is a lot further forward, and that's going to be interesting. So I need to work out, if I drill it, if I can actually get enough material in there, and also I've got to try and see if I can even fit it in the chassis. Let's get these, that's a smaller one, let's get these grub screws just screwed in for now. I did actually cut this down, but I think it's probably still a little bit bigger than the Brazin one, which will mean that I might need to put some shims in the standoff that I've got. It is, yeah, it is bigger than the Brazin one, just marginally, not too bad. So just means a bit of wedging, but the first thing I need to do is get this standoff that holds my links. Just need to get a bit of slack on that, otherwise I won't be able to squeeze this in, because that'll be holding frame together. Yeah, so now I can get a bit of movement on the frame. Now there's going to be some challenges here. The biggest challenge will be probably the screw that I'm using to hold my 3-link in. So the upper link of the 3-link is held in. Is that the right place? Yeah, that's in the right place. It's held in, and that is going to foul the spur potentially. So this gearbox would go in that way and would sit there, and immediately I'm fouling the spur. So this does want to go all the way back, but then I've got the challenge of knocking my camera over while doing a live stream. That's the challenge I've got. Yeah, so now I've got the challenge of trying to get this skid into sort of that position, but that's also where my links are. So that's going to cause me problems. So I need to have a think. I guess one of my options is to run the other spur. I'm just going to have to turn this around a little bit. Sorry, I know it's not the best viewing, but it's just so that I can actually measure up some of this. Would actually help if I put the skid in the right way round. There we go. And bring that skid forwards. Now I imagine the person who designed this would say that this is absolutely not advised, and I would not argue with him at all. But unless we experiment and test and check our hypothesis, then it never turns into anything else. Yeah, getting the back part of this skid to attach to something will be interesting. Don't really want to drill my frame at this point. So if I put this gearbox on, just gently, yeah, the spur is going to hit that third link, and even if I put a 39 on, that would still foul, and then the motor's going to be incredibly forwards but probably going to bounce off the axle. So what are my options? What I could do, because at this point this is completely useless to me, what I could do is cut this corner off, mount my upper links between this and the top, and use that top bar to use that top bar to be the structural hold, and then my rear links hopefully won't bash into anything. That said, what I'd have to cut out would be quite a bit. Oh, decisions. Because my other option is to change the rear links so they attach into these holes, but then I don't get as much anti-squat as I want, which the answer is as much as possible. Although I could try out, I'm not sure these holes are designed for it, I could try out attaching my lower links to there, which would allow me to run this skid with no issues and get quite a bit of anti-squat, potentially even more, because it's, I'm trying to work out if it's more or less. Oh, that'll be interesting. So let's see if I have in my big box of links any links that would do that job, and if I can get links to fit in that hole that my finger's pointing to, then this might actually work. Now, this is the downside of aluminium links. I broke this one, then I tapped it with some M4, and then the M4 bent. So I made them strong enough to not snap the thread off, and then instead it just bent the M4 grub screw that I used. And it wasn't even a tiny grub screw, so it was a bit of a shock. These are the Gpm links. If I just quickly try and measure the eye to eye that I'll need, which is just going to be a guesstimate. Literally eyeballing. About 103 mil. So if I've got one of these that is about 103 mil, we should be in business. So my first one is way too big. Let's look at these. Yeah, that's way too big. Save all your broken links though. Never throw away broken links, because you never know if you're going to use the rod ends or do silly stuff like this. Try and find a scalpel to open up this packet. No, it's gone walkabout. Probably put this. Add some scissors. There's some scissors. We might be in business with these leather ones. Let's have a look. Yeah, they're still a bit long. But I say they're a bit long, I mean I need to test them out. I'm just going to check these. These look super long, these links. I think they're going to be far too big. Yeah, they're the old front links. And then these are some links. No, they would be slightly too long as well. I mean, one of the options is to increase the wheelbase slightly. That's not exactly going to kill me to do that. Yeah. Or, you know, got my threaded rod, so you can always make some links. Yeah, those ones are definitely upper links. They must be my old upper links. They must be my old front or rear links because they're super heavy. Nice Traxxas quality. I'm going to try just double checking that measurement. I mean, yeah, it's completely eyeballed, but yeah, there's not any wiggle room there. What to do? Or do I just put the brazing skid back in and just move everything down and live with it? No, I do want to try this crazy forward skid. But that said, the way I've mounted the brazing skid, I just need to double check where my spur gear would actually be. Because if it's not actually going to move my gearbox much further forwards, I'm probably not even going to bother. So that is definitely there. And the InTheWorks one, yeah, actually surprisingly the InTheWorks one would actually move my would not actually move my gearbox that much further forwards. Well, that's a bit of a shame. It was a reasonable idea. Yeah, it should only move it forwards by about 1/4 of an inch, and I'm not sure that's worth all of the fabrication that entails. unless I can get this to sit further forwards somehow. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is I've only really got one hole it fits in, so it's going to be a challenge, because if it sat about there, yeah, it wouldn't foul, but then I'd have to drill the rails. I don't think I'm going to get through these thick steel rails with, even with a fully charged cordless battery or anything else. It also moves the gearbox off to the side. So I reckon I'm going to put the Brazin Scale one back in, but I'm still going to have a look at doing some excessive anti-squat work. So we'll just pop the gearbox back to how it was. So I'm going to screw this on and pop it back in. But the idea that I had, if I can see my shop keys anywhere, right, they're in my links box. Great. And moving the ESC is just a case of chopping some cables and doing some zip ties, so that's going to be pretty standard. With 3D printed parts as well, I know it's going into the Traxxas Gearbox, which is plastic. I try not to tighten them up too tight, because you can crush the plastic and it just leaves things a bit of a pain. Just check my gearbox doesn't sound too dry. A bit more water. Keep hydrated. Right, okay. Yeah, so let's get these rear links off. Get the gearbox. Actually, we'll leave the gearbox off for now. We'll get these rear links off. It's a shame about that InTheWorks skid, but I think it looks like I've actually found a better alternative for my application. The InTheWorks skid, I would definitely recommend that if you were going to run a heavy motor. But seeing as my motor weighs about 80 grams and it's the lightest motor that you can really reasonably get that works in this kind of crawler, then why would you need to lower the motor weight? But if you're running something a bit bigger, if you're running like a Puller Pro or something, this InTheWorks skid mounts the motor lower, because the motor gets mounted much lower, and the gearbox off to the side, and gives you a lovely flat skid. Whereas the Brazin one kind of uses the Traxxas motor plate, and so doesn't give you the same kind of benefit on a heavier motor. But if you're using a super lightweight motor, then yeah, much of a muchness. And yeah, if you were running a Traxxas skid as well, like the standard skid, you decided not to do any custom work, then you would absolutely get the benefit from the InTheWorks one, because it does, it moves it backwards and moves, well, it doesn't really move the gearbox up, it just doesn't have that huge bulge on the bottom of the truck. Cool. So these links are held on by a variety of bolts and crush washers and nylock nuts and everything else. So my rear axle's loose now. Now, I had the crazy idea, I'm not sure how well it's going to work, of potentially chucking on some shock keys at a, you know, suitably attached angle, so something like that, and then mounting my links much further up, which would give excessive levels of anti-squat, but I'm not sure if I'm going to bother. And in fact, I might, you know, change over to soldering the lights and things on my G500, because I ran through a load of water at the weekend and managed to get one of the lights to break off in the water. So I've fortunately still got the bulb and everything. I just need to fix my light kit, but that would be something else, unless I decide to mess around with these links. We'll see. What do I need to do? I need to put the middle bolt on the slider and try and hold the gearbox in place enough that I can get all the axles back on and all of that jazz. And in case you're wondering about, you know, why I would want anti-squat and anti-dive and everything else, it helps you in climbing and just general traction, to be honest. It causes the truck to push down on, well, causes the rear end to lift, which lifts the weight balance and stops weight from transferring onto the rear end, and then it also gives a good amount of traction, because as you're pushing the truck up, the links are pushing down, whereas if the truck's dropping down, the links are starting to lift up and you don't have the same amount of traction. I'm trying to keep the revolver not too much in the dirt. I managed to catch that bolt, so that's good. I'm just going to hold the gearbox in place, then do the rear links and then do the front links. And the reason why I've got to redo those links is because, well, I took them all off, but also they're a bit of a pain to do after you've put the sliders on. So I'll just get those back on. That would be cool though, wouldn't it? Get it on there. But then I don't get any benefit from the skid, and it screws my gearing, so needs must. Right. I need one of these long bolts and one of these. This is one of the downsides of the old fabricating stuff, is you have to do all this with little nuts and bolts and spring washers and all sorts. So we get that on, and we get a little spring washer and a bolt, and try to fight gravity. And then dab a bit of Loctite on, because we don't trust the nylon or the spring washer or the link or ourselves. and try and pick up the right tool and just nip that up with a box wrench. So just going to hold it this end. Right. That's that link done. And then repeat the process. Trying to put them in a higher hole than the base to again get that anti-squat. I would like to get them a lot higher, but it's just not feasible on this chassis with the rod ends that I've got. I'd have to start cutting corners off the rod ends and tidying them up, or get some of the e-Revo rod ends. I'm going to be lazy and just hold it with pliers. And there we go, great. Of course my axle's decided to escape. These links are the wrong side and all that jazz. Right, now that's on, we can pop our lower link on, making sure that our upper links don't fall underneath the skid and become difficult to fish out later. And this is where it gets a bit awkward, because I've got to get the crush washer on and get that nylock bolt done up, and I can't reach through with the box wrench because the gearbox is in the way, and it all just gets quite annoying. So off we go. Whoa, way too much Loctite. Fortunately most of that has just dripped down the side. So try and get that by hand. Just get that Loctite. Actually, I'm being silly, the gearbox is not yet attached, so I can just get it with a box wrench. That's sorted. Right, these top ones go through the standoff, which I've chucked somewhere. Let's see if we can get you a better angle. See all the things that I use for recording. Can you see? Can you see? There we go. Right. So we'll just get these links back on, and these are held on each end by this standoff. So just going to get a little bit of Loctite on the threads. Then I'm going to wrestle this standoff into position. I'm also going to pop some Loctite in the standoff. So in the end of there, and then kind of hope for the best. Who knows? I certainly don't. Right. One day I will learn to live stream properly. I just can't get that camera to... Yeah, there we go. And that's tight enough that I can just get that either side, start to get those captured. And then done. Right, that's all back together. We'll do the front links now. So more wobbly camera action and a nice view of my laptop. So twist the gearbox back into position, get the front link through and capture it with a bolt, which goes straight through, down through the front link, into the gearbox. Potentially. Doesn't seem to want to line up, so I'll start it off manually. If I can get it to bite. Yep, that's biting in now. Now I can just... Oh, that was not good. Just knocked a load of bolts off the side. We're tidying those up later. There we go. Don't know why it keeps trying to change cameras. Right. Repeat the process on this side. So line up the gearbox, line up the link. Actually, the other benefit of this is you end up running quite short links on the front, which doesn't reduce the articulation massively, but it does sort of limit it compared to the rear. So the rear does most of the work, and then the front. There we go. So that's all sorted. So now we're back to where we started. So we'll put this motor back in and do the cabling in a second. This is actually using a aluminium motor mount, and something I was thinking about changing is the pinion. So I don't know what size that pinion is, so I might have a pinion change. Let me see what options I have in my little box. I've only got smaller options, I think. So I'm going to grab a bigger option. Got a box of pinions somewhere. In fact, that is absolute carnage down there. Dropped a box with about 300 bolts and rod ends and bits and bobs, which I'll be... Oh. Right, hopefully I don't need any of that. Let's have a look what pinions we got. Right, we've got a 14 and a 17. I think 17 will be mental and not actually fit. So I'm going to switch over to a 14. Just have a look, you know, tiny bit more wheel speed. Doesn't need a lot, but the low down control's already mentally slow, so don't think I need anything else. It looks like I've got a 9, 10, 11, 12. Looks like I've got a 12 on there at the moment. Don't think I've got a 13. Right. Just a quick pinion swap. Oh, I've tried to use one of my brushless pinions and they're too big because I'm using the 12s. Let me check. I forgot that this was a... Forgot this was a smaller pinion size. Right. Makes this fun. So what was I running? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I was running a 13. Oh, we'll stay with the 13 then, because I can't find a 14. And going down to a 12 would be useless. This is not my day. This is not my day. Right. Mounting the motor back in. It's a bit fiddly. Right, I don't know if people are watching this are interested in a pinion swap, but assume I've changed the position. I always put the pinion back on after mounting the motor up, so then I can adjust it to find the right balance between as much of the tooth touching as possible and not hanging off the end of the motor shaft and not chewing up your spur. There we go. Right, well, back to square one. So we'll move the ESC, we'll do the portal cover. And sorry for wasting people's time. I'm sure when I measured it I thought I would be able to get it all together, but turns out I'd accidentally found an optimal thing. And actually I've got some scales somewhere. I've talked about the weight of this thing, but I've never been actually sure how much it weighs. So I've got the wheels separate, and I know my battery weighs I weigh a battery and I weigh the shell separately and then add it all up. So we've got a battery at 115 grams, a shell and body pins, which is 202 grams, including all the fiberglass reinforcement. We've got wheels and tyres, including all the nuts and hardware. So that's 767. Wow, they're super light. Still want to try some plastic wheels again, but like plastic bead locks. And then, moment of truth. Problem is, this thing's got so much articulation, it's a pain to measure. That's 1748 plus. Oh, so it's a little bit porkier than I thought it was. So I thought it was around 2.5 kilos. It actually turns out that it's 2.8 kilos, which is weird because I picked up someone else's truck that was 2.6 kilos and that felt much heavier. Yeah, 1749. Right, let's get this brass off because I don't want the brass anymore, even though it is low down weight, and that should help reduce things. Where did I put it? Right, that's my old diff cover. Yeah, we'll do it this way, give you a good view of it. Right, so we're going to focus on these, hopefully. I'm not even going to try and focus the camera because it'll do the weird swapping out to something else. So to change your portal covers or to get into to diff covers or to get into them, it's 4 bolts, and I do them in this order. Do them in this particular order because the one that's under there I always drop, and actually I can start to wiggle the diff off and hopefully not drop it. Yeah, so that's letting me release the diff cover without that screw coming off. So that's my diff cover. So it came in at 1832 grams. And that weighs 72. So now it's going to weigh around about 2760 ish, because this plastic one is so light I'm not even going to bother weighing it. I'm just going to remove any bits of grass from it. It's got a nice bit of marine grease in there, just keeping it nice and sealed. Not that I run this thing in the wet anymore, try not to. Right, that goes back on. That brass diff will go in my bag because if I can't get up something I'll panic and then put it on. You can see that I've got brass hexes on, they're coming off, and aluminium wider hexes are going on. Because the standard hex to hex width is this actually. These are standard hex widths. So the standard hex width is more than my calipers can measure. It's about 198 for a standard hex width. And I want to go to about 205, 210 width, just to increase the balance and side hilling. I've already modified the C-hubs and everything, so I don't worry about whether I can turn, because I have pretty good steering as it is. I haven't struggled or had to reverse too many times. I guess if I was comping I might play about with the overdrive a bit more. Right, now they're done. So that's made it a bit lighter. We're going to move this ESC. Let's move the ESC. Yeah. So I'm going to clip off yet again some of these cable ties. Fortunately, the power for the servo is just one cable tie. In fact, I'm not even going to clip it off. I'm just going to remove the pigtail of the servo. Oh, but I am going to have to clip it off because the ESC is captured. So we're going to move our ESC. And oh, that's got cables everywhere, so we'll see what we can do. Yeah, looks like we're going all the way down. Right, so ESC weighs less than the batteries, so that should be fine. I did actually clip the tie on the excess of the JST rather than shorten it when I was soldering it. So I should now, yeah, I'm just going to clip off all the zip ties and just start again with the cable management. So we're changing our weight bias. It was quite front biased anyway, but but we're changing our weight bias, so it's still mounting the weight in the front half, but it's moving from here back to here. But it is moving the weight from this height to down to this height, which should really help. It's also moving motor wires and servo wires, so they're all going to get bundled up and tightened, because I want those to be as low as possible. I also will put a tiny bit of Velcro on the switch, a little zip tie, and mount that there, so I can actually turn the damn thing on and off as I need to. That's great. So that's the ESC on that side. That's my receiver flapping about. Battery is going to sit this side. So now we're super low. That connection gets made. That's fine. I'm going to take off this plastic that I've got on the front for mounting things, because I just don't need it, and every little bit helps. I'm going to put that to one side, come back to it. You know what, I'm really annoyed at myself for dropping all of those bolts, because that's going to be a pig to tidy. It's probably worth talking about how I've managed to get this so low. Oh, I've got access to my panhard again, so I can tighten that back up. I do keep knocking this panhard hard enough to stretch the bolt, but I've put one of those panhead screws in, because it's the bolt that's stretching, it's not anything else, and I can keep tightening it up, and that has, I mean, I could tack weld it on. So get this camera super low. Let's have a look. I've got everything absolutely slammed in there. Now I do have the option to take the ride height even lower. There's still some holes on this, so I could drop it down, but the challenges that I have are my panhard mount that side and my rod end for the panhard mount this side, because it needs to clear the diff. Now the answer to that is staring straight at me, and it's to get a servo on axle mount, put this bad boy, this big beefy Holmes Hobby servo onto that mount, and then all that weight that I just took off, this little brass thing, now bearing in mind that weighs 70 grams. Oh, I've just noticed it's got a lube port. Oh, that's quite cool. So you can undo that bolt and squeeze in lube. Jazzy. This bad boy weighs 130, 160 grams. So instead of covering this thing in brass, I will look at getting that servo on axle. Now, if I do decide to enter like the Scale Nationals or something, then I will have some challenges there, because I'll lose scale points. But if I'm using this thing to just crawl over as much as possible, then that's how I've done it. But yeah, to get it absolutely slammed, I mean, these are, I think they're 3/8 of an inch taller than a standard Traxxas one. So, you know, a standard Traxxas one would be about there. That's where we are. I've had to do things like shave down these rod ends. In fact, that one's got flipped the wrong way up, so I'm going to pop that off and turn it over so that they clear under here, and bend my steering drag link. I've shaved down the panhard there, and instead of using the GPM adjustable links on the front, I've used a panhard link that fits, and that's modelled on the original Traxxas one. So what I could do is drill a hole in that link, and then be able to mount my panhard rod even lower, which would be ridiculous, which I'm actually tempted to do. I'm really tempted to do that, to take that off and drill it. So maybe that's what we do. But for now, I need to get myself back on the not having bump steer train and deal with this. So I've shaved down the other side of this link, but through doing, sorry, I'm just tightening these up because I felt a bit of a wiggle in them. It's just the bushings wearing already. To get this so low, I shaved down the other side of it, and then obviously as I've been tweaking my steering or crashing it or skipping a hole, it's ended up the wrong way round. So I am going to just flip that over, and then does that mean that's out the way more? So let's get this link back in. Right, so the reason why I flipped it was to get it lower. So what I'm going to do is just shave the other side of it so it doesn't catch as it steers, which is fine. Not sure which way I just turned that, so I'll try going back the other way. It's only a couple of, it's like half a mil extra, so it's probably 1 or 2 stops on the sub trim, or even the trim. I don't even bother with sub trim anymore. I don't know what other people think, but you know, I don't really care if it tells me if it's off, as long as it's driving in a straight line. So yeah, these are the crazy lengths I go to have it so low. You can probably see there that link there is catching. The thread goes all the way in, so the simplest solution that I've got is to find a nice sharp knife, which I think I have somewhere, and just cut it down so that we still have thread, but we have a nice sloped angle for when it does invariably bump, because it will, because it's at low angles. This is only if the suspension's fully drooped as well, so it's not most of the time. Most of the time is it's trying to climb, it's transferring the weight to the back, so you don't really have this issue too much. So now, as that pushes past, the servo can actually get it to push past, and I'm just going to just chamfer that edge because I did a poor job of it. There we go. See, I normally use my scalpel for this, but I can't find it, and this blade is a bit worn. Not sure I've got any spares. But it just needs to remove that step. Oh, actually I can see my scalpel now. Let's try. Let's just remove that step. Do it the right way. Because this is a flexible scalpel, I can put sort of a bit of a rounded edge on it. Yeah. So that doesn't even, that now as it goes past, just doesn't catch at all, even when it's down at the bottom. Or if it does, yeah. Looks like my wife and son are watching this as well. So one way to get your viewers up is get your family to watch. Right. So we've lowered everything. This battery should have some charge on it. Now we need to do cables again. I don't know how many times I've done the cables on the live stream. but we'll do it. The red balloon that you're seeing is my receiver, because it's the most lightweight option that I've found, and is mostly waterproof. I have had the cars underwater with the balloon receiver, not had an issue with them. Try and find my box of Velcro as well, as I mentioned Velcroing that bit on. Right. Just cutting a piece of Velcro, dropping it on the floor, using the other piece that's in my hand. Right. Just trim this down. So this Velcro's got a nice strong glue on the back of it. So I can glue that up, pop that on there, and now I have a really wobbly switch, but oh, come on. I'll super glue it on if I need to. Now I've got a wobbly switch that I can reach under when the shell is on to turn it on and off. Mostly because the castle likes to go and beep a lot when it's run out of power. So these cables, we're going to curl trying to think where the best place for them is, because I don't want them to catch on the revolver, and I don't want them to get crushed too much. So yeah, we'll just go with a simple squash. I was going to try and do something fancy, but this is all about everything that needs to be done to make it climb, not to win any scale points yet. I'm very tempted to get a hard body and enter the scale nationals, but that would require me to buy a hard body, and since my wife is watching, I won't be doing that. But if anyone has a smashed up hard body that they want to sell, then definitely get in touch, because that could be something that I fix on the channel and use as part of it, because I would definitely use a smashed up one over a proper one, because I am a moron and I destroy all of my rigs. Now, I'm trying not to catch these cables too much, so I'm just trying to get a little bit of slack on that one. So they're all nicely tucked in, not too bent, trimmed out. We've got servo power and servo signal, so we're going to put those across the top, and then again we'll bundle them closer down. I could trim them down, solder them in, everything else, but I just don't think it's worthwhile. It would definitely remove weight, without a doubt, but it also removes the ability to change my mind and panic and redo all the cabling at a later date, which is, you know, likely to happen. This is probably the third or fourth time we're doing cabling on the channel, at least. So now we'll mount the receiver, trying to get the right camera angle, not easy. Something like that, there we go. Right, that's so the receiver is 2 zip ties together, and they just go around the receiver. I've got the Bluetooth module in there as well, so I can change the settings on the fly. Now this has got all of my weight really low. Right. and that's going to go around the cable, and that should hold it on. There we go. Right, we're in business. So trim off these zip ties, don't need the excess. And then these cables I'm going to just fold up on each other. The battery cable is looking quite good. Balance plug doesn't hang out too badly, so I just need to find a nice way to fold those up. You know, you could go crazy and super low CG with this, but like I say, it's probably not worth it. Although I have just seen a way that I'm going to get these cables nice and low in the chassis, so bear with me. I'll get some of those cable-y cover things as well, I think, that I've seen people using. Right, so now I can just make sure that that's all pressed down, and then I've got a little loop on the back of the gearbox that's used, I think, for the micro servos and things, and I'm just going to get a zip tie to come around those cables and just pull them downwards. Easier said than done. I'll grab some tweezers. Yeah, great. So now we can pull, if I can get that through. Yeah, we're nearly there. Cool. So that's pulling those cables nice and low and tight against the gearbox. I'm going to put one last zip tie on, which is around these cables here, to just bring them away from the motor. And in fact, I can just pop that other zip tie off, which is putting stress on that cable. Just bring that around gently. Yeah, there we go. That cable's much less stressed. Great. So let's go back out to the front. Cool. So yeah, we've removed a very small amount of weight from the crawler. Probably got a few less zip ties on it, but the ones that are on there are functioning in a way that's making sure that the weight is as low as possible. I'm just trying to get a bit of extra tension on this one here that's holding my receiver on. There we go. So now it's, yeah, it feels a bit more balanced actually, but we've definitely, like the battery and the ESC are, which is easier to measure, won't it, are probably, yeah, they're around 45 mil lower, about I don't know inches very well, an inch and 3/4 lower, which puts the weight lower, and yeah, everything is feeling good. Our hub angles are still good. We didn't get to use the InTheWorks skid, so I just to recap, I couldn't get this far forward enough. It's designed to sit further back than how I've mounted the other ones, therefore the benefits of it, yeah, looking at the mounting holes, it would have moved my motor probably about 5mm forwards and down, but it would have raised the gearbox by about 5mm. Now on this gearbox is 170 grams and the motor's 80 grams. So yes, the motor weight comes down, but you're lifting more weight up than you are bringing down. That plug's that's not going to stay on, is it? So we'll put a dab of glue on where I did that terrible job of velcroing that switch on. And the glue's going on the piece of velcro. I'm not putting glue into the velcro hooks, even though I am tempted sometimes. And I'll just hold that on there while I talk. We've brought all of our cables lower. We've had a little chat about moving this to be servo on axle, which would lower some of the weight, and if I could, yeah, I suppose I wouldn't have the drag link. I could reroute the drag link to be somewhere else, and then, you know, that would get the servo weight onto the axle rather than in the chassis. But to be honest, with the pen spring mod that's on this and the sort of weight, now it doesn't have weight on the front, but the weight's low down for the servo. What's going to happen is it's not going to unload as much because the motor, because the ESC and battery aren't there, they're lower down, so they'll be in a different place for when the links push. So overall, yeah, that feels really different. It's much less, I mean, it's still, if I put my hand in the middle, it's still got that naturally front weight bias, which is great, and so it should, like the motor and everything's still front, but it's not as much as it had at the front, which I think will be fine. I'm going to put my tyres back on, and yeah, sorry I didn't manage to do any fabrication of links or anything, but I totally miscalculated the skid. But I am going to get the G500 shell down and try and solder that together. But before we do that, let's get some tyres back on, and wheels, obviously. And I think given that weight's been lowered by as much as it has, I mean, bearing in mind that you're talking about scale stuff, so in a real car we've lowered that weight by about 1/2 meter, or 18 inches, 1.5 foot. It's quite a lot. Still loving the hairbun foams. Absolutely recommend you try them. Vent your tyres if you're going to try them, but make sure it's a set of tyres that you're happy to vent. Don't come back and say I vented my tyres, went back to normal foams, and now my foams are full of water, because that should be common sense and obvious. Yeah. Doesn't quite balance. It's not as stiff as the Proline foams were. But that's nice, because it means that they'll hook up better. My internet connection's being patchy as usual, or YouTube stats being patchy. I look over and sometimes I've got 4 people watching, sometimes I've got no people watching. I'm sure it'll sort itself out. Right. Cool. Well, I will grab a transmitter, and I'm going to grab the G500 shell, and let's just have a little play on the bench. What can can we drive over that people will see? I just can change it to the Scattergun model, otherwise it'll steer in the wrong direction. Right. Something heavy like a Dremel. What's the other camera look like? Let's have a look at both. Cool. So, let's see how soft those tyres are, even though they're covered in mud. Yeah, it's pushing the Dremel, so I'll hold on to it. Oh, they're spinning. Interesting. There we go. So yeah, tons and tons and tons of clearance, even though we've got all that weight super low, which is just great. I was looking at doing like a bend in these links, but I've basically just decided I can't be bothered. They're enough in line with this that it's not affecting breakover too much. If I do find some of the awkward breakovers happen, then I'll probably change that. But yeah, so try climbing up on there again. Oh, I will have to hold it. Just not quite biting. Yeah, loads and loads of breakover, and this is what you can see with the rear articulation. As it gets over, the rear wheels with those angled shocks still have tyres on the ground, and now it's climbing over all kinds of stuff. Although it's stranded now because it's lifted all four wheels off the ground. Right, we will do some scattergun videos as soon as I can find some cold, dry weather that is at a weekend when I'm allowed out, if I'm allowed out, if the government doesn't screw everything up more than they already have done. That switch is now attached properly. Everything's turned off. We've got our weight balance right, and I need to get a soldering iron and stuff, so let's go back out front. So time to do some soldering, which is actually one of my favourite activities for crawlers. Now, what happened at the weekend was the lights. Keep looking over at my laptop as though my camera's there. Maybe I'll start using the FaceTime camera, and then it'll be a lot easier for me to refer to the laptop. So what happened at the weekend was I was blasting through some water, and certain lights stopped working, and I'm just assuming that because I was showing off, it's just karma, and I think I just hit the water so fast that the slamming of the water into the back of the shell just ripped off one of the connections. That's my guess. I lost both the rear lights and one of the front top lights. So yeah, still using Dare to Print crawler stands. Have a look at my other videos for a review on these. Absolutely love these things. Not that I need them anymore with the hairbun phones, but they are quite nice to allow your shocks to rest without being under any kind of pressure. So that's quite nice. Just get this out of the way and just move a few bits about. So soldering iron, we'll use a oh no, I'll use the mains to power it, so I'll just be a moment. I'll clean down the desk as well. I can power it from a LiPo, but they're all in storage mode, so that will be bad. I've got a random cable in my hand. Oh good, right, that's just cabling. God, that would have been scary if I just ripped my soldering iron to pieces. Alright, move some things out the way, move a random piece of cable. Oh, a preview of something that I'm going to do as an experiment another time. So I did a pen spring mod on the Gmade, and pen spring mod on the Gmade, and hopefully, let's not show off my address too much, hopefully I'm going to install these. Now these are big bore shocks, but they're really short, and I've forgotten what size they are, but I think they're like 70 and 80mm shocks. So instead of adding limiters or anything else, I'm just going to try using some shorter shocks. So, got to remember to Sharpie out my address on things. Right. Oh, that shell is absolutely smashed. Let's get ourselves heating up. So soldering irons on, heating up. It's on at about 300 degrees Celsius because we're doing small stuff, might bump it up in a bit. We've got some soldering paste and wires and stuff, so let's go to the close-up view. Now the soldering iron's smoking because I leave it with a bit of solder on the end to stop it from corroding, so I'm just going to clean that off, dip it in the soldering paste to try and give it a bit of a clean off that soldering paste so it doesn't smoke me out too much. Then I'm just going to tin up the iron. Just takes a second to get some heat back into it. So that's nicely coated. Dip it in, clean off that solder, and we've got a nicely tinned iron with no crap on it. Right, let's take a look. Oh, right, well, that's quite obvious what's happened there. The LED has just been ripped out completely, and the wires, actually the wires that I didn't solder on the other day, the other side, have been ripped off as well. So, lesson learned, don't blast through water at warp speed. This is going to be a painfully awkward fix. So I'm going to go back out front. I'm going to have to just clip off a few zip ties because I followed Traxxas's guidelines and put 80,000 zip ties in to hold it all together. done a real job on these LEDs on the rear, so bad that I'm not sure I'm going to be able to save them, but we will try. I will start with a flat blade screwdriver, if I can find one, to try and get them out of their mounts, because I can't tug on the wires because I've managed to knock the wires out. Right. Oh, that's beautifully bad. I think the easiest thing is going to be popping the mounts out, because they're held in with some little screws, and hopefully if I get these little screws out, I'll be able to just get the whole mount out and then just tip it on one side, and it should allow me some access. There we go. Right. That is muddy. Right, we'll just put these back on, because knowing myself, I will forget to put everything back together and then be scrabbling around. The kit does come with loads of spare lenses and things, so you don't have to worry too much. Unfortunately, what the kit doesn't come with is spare wing mirrors, and I have absolutely annihilated the right hand side to the point that I'm just going to try and squeeze the Lexan back around it and just hope that it doesn't completely rip out next time I drive. Or if it does, I notice it. Right, this one I should be able to push down on and get that LED out. Yeah. Right, it's going to be an awkward one. So I'll probably just clip out another zip tie and then get you a nice close-up of the mess. I have so much fun with this truck, but because I've put the hobby wing axe in it and a 12-tooth pinion, it will do 25-30 miles an hour, probably on road, probably about 20-25 miles an hour on dirt. Struggles with traction. Even with locked diffs it struggles with traction, which means that you can crash faster, harder, have a lot more fun. Right. Now, I've not had the best luck with this light kit so far, in that I have had other bits of it, bits of the solder just fail when they really shouldn't have. But it looks like I've completely torn the leg off the LED, and so this is going to be an interesting fix. So I'm going to get my scalpel. I'm going to use copious amounts of flux, and I don't know how to get out of that mode, so we'll just do that. There we go. Use copious amounts of flux to cheat my way through this, but the first thing we're going to do is knock everything over, and then after that put a drill behind it to stop it falling over. We're going to cut off this heat shrink, and we're going to try and see if we can save the leg of the LED that's been snapped off. So that leg is in there. What I'm hoping I'm going to be able to do is blob enough solder on the contact, but the contact has corroded, so that's why we're going to use a large amount of solder. Yeah, that should be saved. Oh, great. This is going to be 50-50 whether it works, so I will get the truck down later. The light module and everything's in the truck, so I have to plug it back into the truck to test it. So get this nice and clean and start with getting this leg, dipping it in my soldering paste, because the soldering paste is corrosive when it's heated up. Tin my soldering iron, and then I'm just going to go to town on this. It's going to get all wet and bubbly because we are just applying loads and loads and loads of solder in the hope that that paste will do the work for us. And it looks like the solder is dripping on and attaching. That's great. Now the interesting bit. I think before I try and tackle the other leg, I think I'm going to just make sure that this leg is a bit more soldered on. So using the scalpel, ton of soldering paste, and we're just going to blob solder on there in the hope that we can just make that joint a bit nicer. Come on, you. Do you know what? I'm going to heat this up because that has gone right down. There we go, right. Try that again. Use gravity and just, I mean, I'm desoldering it more than I am soldering it. We're just going to get this leg coated and just try and get that black wire soldered a bit better on. I'm going to hold it down with my scalpel, get it in that flux, and then just try and paste it all together. And it's having none of it. Good old live streams. Get that a bit more pasted. There we go. That's actually bonded that time. Yeah. I'm not having a lot of luck with this light kit. Probably help if I didn't turn my soldering iron up to 400 degrees either, because that's for larger gauge wire. Right, that's better. Yeah, that's a nice even joint. Oh, right, that leg's got loads of solder on it. Now I've got to try and work out how you make an LED leg reattach. I'm hoping I can put a load of flux on this and try and just get a bit of solder on where that leg was, and try and attach the two together. But it looks like I might just be buying some red LEDs. Yeah, I am going to be buying some red LEDs. That is absolutely stuffed, as they say. So I'll need to work out the spec of these LEDs. I'm just going to, for now, cut them off the cable because they're fudged. I'm going to cut the other one off because that's fudged as well. Yeah, it's snap the leg at the LED. Great, they're off. We need some heat shrink. I have to find out what wattage, voltage, amperage those LEDs were. The other thing that's come loose is it's quite hard to show, but we will try our best. There's a little board just here, and that little board should have this wire attached, and as you can see it doesn't. So we're going to clip the wire that holds that board, clip the pin that holds that board. Going to clean down this wire and try and work out how I'm going to do this. Yeah, that should be fine. So this wire here, I'm just going to clean off the contacts. So I'm just stripping these wire ends. I'm imagining the other end of them is wedged somewhere in the lump of solder on the board. Right, we're just going to pull those apart because they're that kind of wire that's bonded together. We just need a bit of space. I'm using the back of the scalpel to just get it started and then pull those wires apart, and that's because I just want them to be away from each other. And just make sure that the end, yep, it's nice and easy. So the ends of these are now mostly exposed. Just getting that last bit of yep, so I've got the wire exposed. I don't want to pull this shell apart too much, so we're just going to dip the wire in the flux trick, which when those wires heat up will sort of corrode, just get rid of any corrosion. I'm just going to dab some solder on them to tin them. And the flux is going to let me do that nice and easily. And then the same with this one. Not sure I've exposed enough wire, but it's definitely tinned. That one's tinned, the other one's a bit blobby gobby, but it doesn't really matter too much. Now I've got to work out how I'm going to do this on camera. Fun. I guess the answer is get the helping hand doodad. We'll work out camera angles in a minute. The main thing is to try and hold this in place so I don't burn my fingers. Or maybe I should start burning my fingers because, you know, it's kind of how electro boom started with the exploding everything electrical. Right. Slather on the soldering paste. Get some solder on the soldering iron. Then, with any luck, if I can get this at the right angle, should be able to just hold one of the wires on, which will be the black wire, because that'll be the innermost wire. Knock over my camera and ruin everything. Yeah, no, we'll try that again. If you see sick, sorry about the dodgy camera work. Right, let's try that again. So I'm going to try and lean on the table, and yeah, of course my hands are completely in the way. So just doing the innermost one, holding it down in the flux, heating up the solder on the board, letting it catch, just getting it nice and caught in there. The flux is stopping the solder from merging with any of the adjacent pads. And then do the same with the next one. And then just make sure that that first solder pad, yeah, that's great. So we need to find a way to stop that thing from flapping around. So I'm going to cover my soldering iron in a nice ball of solder, unplug it. So that ball of solder is going to stop the soldering iron from corroding and keeps it nice and healthy. Unplug my grips without breaking the connections I've just made. So the soldering paste really helps there, even though solder has flux in it. That extra paste really helps just stop you from messing up any circuit boards or anything else, because as it melts, it covers the plastic of the printed circuit board and stops the solder from leaking all over the place and creating really bad connections. Now, these two rear ones, they're going to require a bit of, well, they're going to require LEDs. This one, I need to just find a better way to mount it. I imagine it's because that's flapping around that board. So I'm going to tuck a zip tie underneath the fake bit for the wipers, because it's got fake wipers. Hopefully they're not going to turn on me too much. I'm going to squeeze the zip tie through there, if it'll go through, and then try and hold that board a bit better. Not the Traxxas way of doing it, not the approved way of doing it, but I want that board to stop flapping around and breaking, because I'm not sure, as much as I like soldering, I'm not sure I want to solder this thing after every single trip. Right, so that's decided to come out completely, so we'll get that back in. Or not, we'll not get that back in. Oh, it catches, right, okay. I know, I will use the wing mirrors, especially since that's the one that's going to fall off, and that might actually be why it broke in the first place. Right. Okay, that seems to be captured. just don't want that to flap around. So if I put some zip ties around both sides of it to try and hold it in place, that should hopefully stop it from messing me about. There we go. Right, sweet. So right, it's not going to stop it from flapping around yet because it's not quite perfect, so we'll grab another zip tie and just find a way to hold it still. That's better. That's holding it tight. There we go. Cool. That's all soldered back together. I'm going to go and have a look on Amazon for extra bits. The scattergun, I'm going to try and find some nice rocks to play with that on. I imagine Armscliff will be a lot quieter now that the rock climbers can't go there in groups of, you know, 30 as they seem to do, and get away with it, because it's only going to be like groups of 2 or families, so or households. So that'll be interesting. I think I'm going to end there. That's been about 2 hours. Yeah, scattergun's good. Just need some LEDs for that. I can't even remember whether these were white or red LEDs. So I'm going to... What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to grab a multimeter. I'm going to find out what the voltage is that the light kit uses. Now, I don't need to plug the shell in, I just need to turn on the main body, because I've got the rock lights and the light module is actually on the main chassis. Oh my god, this thing is a porker compared to the scattergun. In fact, I'm just going to give it a quick visual check because it had some lovely crashes this weekend. Absolutely fantastic crashes. Practically full speed into a wall, or it was like a stony ledge, but to all intents and purposes it was a wall. And yeah, I've not broken the panhard mount, which I expected to. I've not broken any link mounts. There's no discernible flex. The steering horn has got a little bit loose, so we will just nip that up, which is easier said than done. Oh, actually, no, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Release this end. No, we're nice and tight this end. There's no play in the C hubs, no play on the rear hubs. Chassis rails look straight. Nothing's, you know, it flexes if you twist it, but that's to be expected. Yeah, I can't see anything cracked or broken. Great. So we'll plug in a battery. And you can do this with a storage mode battery, because a storage mode battery is 11.4 volts for 3S, and it's not going to cause you any issues. That'll last 6 months before it becomes dangerous. So if you use a couple of points of a volt, then you won't have issues. I've just seen that Adam's joined. Hi, Adam. So just going to turn it on. Oh. Just going to check my rock lights, just check they're all working, they're all fine. So it looks like everything's cool. It's flashing because it's not plugged in. But I'm just going to grab a multimeter and just check the readings on those rock lights. And make sure I put it on the right one for once, because I have a 20 volts. Yeah. Just want to try and find out what that's reading. I should be able to do it in line, shouldn't be a problem. That's certainly sapping voltage. What's it's going to be one of those days. That should be fine. That should be completing the circuit and being able to pick up the voltage, but it looks like there's some magic to the Traxxas thing, or yet again my multimeter is broken. Yeah, it looks like my multimeter's decided to pack in again. Oh no, it's doing continuity now, so let's try that again. Oh, that's interesting. So it looks like it drops the voltage down from 11.4 volts down to about 3 volts, which is, well, yeah, that's a shock. I wasn't expecting the step down transformer module for the Traxxas to drop it down to 3 volts, which is pretty cool. Right, I'm just going to test the amperage that I should be able to get by bridging. I don't know if it'll let me do that by bridging. Let me see. No, you don't want to do that today. Yeah, this multimeter's decided to mess me about as usual. You should be able to pick that up because I'm picking that up off the direct off the input or the output. Oh, what can I pull out to do an amp draw test? Actually, I don't care. No, I know that it's now 3 volts for the LEDs, so I can get LEDs that will take that. Yeah, that'll probably translate to 3 amps, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, hairbun foams. If you haven't watched the video for the hairbun foams, watch the video for the hairbun foams. I've vented mine. I'm going to try and go to my close-up. Vented my tyres. Yeah, you can see the holes there. The way I did that was I got some of this brass rod, put it against the green sandpaper you can see in the background, and sharpened it to like a sharp edge on the end, and then just used that to drill the tyres, you know, using a drill, and that made these really good open holes. And with the hairbun foams that are completely waterproof, ran it through the water loads, like deep water right up to the top of the shell, hence the rear's not working, and yeah, just had a great time. So yeah, even though I said last like 5 minutes ago I was going to wrap up, I am going to wrap up now. I'm going to go and help my wife with dinner because I'm hungry. Scattergun's fixed. G500 just needs 2 LEDs. Coming up on the channel this week, we've got the second part of the budget brushless, take 2. Take 3 is coming out soon. There's a review of the Holmes Hobbies servo. I'm going to do a review of the revolver and castle combo as well. Can't quite get this shell to line up. Going to be doing more on the beginners series, learning to crawl. One of the main ones I'm going to talk about is square edge stuff, where you kind of get stuck against something and your truck just jiggles, and the sort of 2 or 3 techniques that I use, mainly being sort of reversing back and using enough power, finding an angle, and then one more that you'll find out when you watch the video. But other than that, have a really good evening, and I'll catch you all next time. Thank you.